Thank you, Judith, for coming to our side of campus.
Okay, now you're ready.
As many people, probably most people, some people know anyway, Judith and Beth Coco are working on a component of our global impact study of public access to ICT. And they're doing work in Brazil, looking at, as is from the title slide there, from the non-instrumental uses that are supposedly the ones that are not as valued within the development community, such as gaming or social networking, things of that sort. And whether those, which are sometimes, there are rules that prohibit their use in public sites because they think they're not contributing to the developmental goals that they've set out. This is a study that wants to kind of take a critical look at that assumption and actually do some real research around how do those how do people that engage in those activities, what happens to them, how do those skills transfer to other types of
Don't
things.
take everything away.
You want to
come out and do the talk?
But anyway, so I'll stop there and
or this is crap.
And then we can just talk about it.
I just have a ginger cookie get back there.
So yes, I'll stop there. But anyway, just want to say this is part of a larger study, and that type of, and we're going to be using the data that comes in from this, incorporating it with a bunch of the other studies and survey data that we're doing as part of this study.
Right.
So, Judith, it's all yours.
Thanks so very much. The first half of the talk is over. No, not really. But my name is Judith-Yaaqoubi again. I'm a first-year PhD student in the Department of Human-Centered Design and Engineering. And I'm a first-year PhD, but last year I was a master's student, and I've started working as a research assistant with Beth Coco. And since September 2009, I'm working on this study now. So the non-instrumental use as a component of the general ICT skill acquisition. And I would love, I have somebody this talk basically is really just about how we have developed the instruments, what was kind of the background to the study, how we have developed the instruments. And then Professor Corker and we both went to a field trip to Brazil, and I'll tell you a little bit about the experiences that we had there, what we have learned from that, and how we have incorporated some of those learnings in our instruments. Unfortunately, I would love to stand here and then go on with that and say, this is the data that we have, and here are the results. We are not quite there yet. But data collection should happen this month. All fingers crossed. And yeah, I'll tell you a little bit about that as well. So, if you go back again. Sorry, because, motivation, I think I said everything, instrument development. Computer-based exercises, I had a question to this before, so we call this CVE. That's one instrument that we have developed, and then we'll talk a little more about this because this is probably the most innovative, or this is the one that we're most worried about. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about that. So, and again, as Chris has started already, the non-instrumental use of ICTs, I think you all know that here is really just one of the in-depth studies of the global impact study. I think there's 7 like this, or correct me, is it 7 in-depth studies that are running right now? And we're
Actually 9.
Yeah.
9? Okay. Yeah, so we are one of the many, and we have tied our instruments a little bit back to that big user survey as well. We go forward. So first of all, before I go any further, I really want to know, want to kind of talk to you about what we have defined as non-instrumental uses, because there's various definitions out there. If you go forward. So one more. Non-instrumental uses, we have defined this as categories of playing computer games and using social networking sites and applications. So really just finding out to this non-instrumental use, to what people do for fun, what they learn by that, what can they take away, and then also a big part of the study is kind of, can they transfer it to anything else, or can we kind of make an assumption that they take something away from that and transfer that to more instrumental uses. Go ahead. So a little bit about the motivation for that study and what has triggered this study. So Professor Kolko has done over 10 years of study in Central Asia. And what she has found there is that non-instrumental use, computer games mainly, and also social network is a significant portion of the ICT ecology there. and that also gamers have more frequent interaction with technology than basic internet users. And a big finding is not only that there is more frequent interaction, but it's also people from lower income groups and with less education that have more interaction with technology. So that triggered this kind of, okay, can this be a first touch to a computer, and can this then be transferred to other users to more?
I have a question on a definition for non-instrumental. When you're, and just not seeing the definition now, the aspect that is related to social media is communications, just emailing, for instance, with family, friends. Is that part of that, or
no? It would really just more be this chatting, being on Orkut, on Facebook, being on social network sites. So, going on from that was basically the starting point. Then we did a little more research on what is gaming in general. So, and we have found that there is actually a really big community that talks about the learnings from games, and there's very many positive aspects to it. The main or the biggest area is really here, which is well-designed computer games. She speaks a lot about educational games. How can we kind of have this flow that gamers are in? How can we translate this into educational games that there's actually some content learning? But, I mean, we did a lot of literature review on that, but we defined that this is not something that we want to look into. We really want to look into commercial game or COTS games, like off-the-shelf games that you buy that are not educational use. But then there's also action video games can provide children with the training needs for computer literacy. So there is studies around that as well. The problem is, so it's really that it's not really transferred yet. There's a lot of saying, okay, yes, you learn collaboration, team building. There's this article in Wired, was in 2006, like, do you play World of Warcraft? You're hired. Yahoo just hired somebody because they're team leaders or guild leaders, and they have skills that people in industry are looking for, right? But then, if you go further, we have this big discrepancy, and we found this again when we went to Brazil, that games, YouTube, social networking is just not allowed in libraries. Or if you go further, here it says again it's blocked, and this is mainly in places where it's free internet access. So if you go further, Christian Sandvik has actually done a big study in the US on libraries with children, but he said that the narrowly instrumental rationales of public policy are rehearsed and repeated in everyday conversation at the center, even to the extent that child's play is denaturalized and seen as a problem that must be corrected. So he really talks about like librarians talking about, oh, you know, he's doing games, like as if this would be something really bad to it. And so there's this discrepancy, right? There's this huge amount of literature that says, okay, it's actually good for you. You learn something, but then there is policies that just say, okay, but this is really bad. You can't do that. And in libraries, we don't want this. So this was triggered our research questions. So it's some more research questions, but these are the main research questions, I would say. So what ICT skills do people gain from non-instrumental users? And then are these skills transferable to other more instrumental users? And then also, does it constitute an important motivation for non-users to start using computers, especially in this area where there is no outlet for other users? For example, we talked to kids in Brazil, and they had a computer at their school. They were allowed every Wednesday to go on this computer. But then when we asked them if they were allowed to do any, games or social networking, they were just like, no, kind of totally absurd, this thought. But so yeah.
Back to her question. What is an instrumental use?
An instrumental use?
What instrumental to what?
Well, we have defined it as kind of creating a document, like writing an email to get. It goes a little bit into the employability area, right? So learn a task that you can use then in an environment that kind of is either for school or for work. That's more instrumental use.
So email to one's family would be in some gray area.
That would be some gray area, yeah.
It's not
No, but knowing how to use email, you can make the assumption that it's also used for school and for work. So if you know how to use the email, would the more fall into the instrumental area.
If you do gaming, so you can shoot better, like in the Army, is that an instrumental use?
No, but what you do to make the gun shoot, that can possibly be transferred as a instrumental use. If it's kind of some, I don't know, you wouldn't necessarily do a copy paste for that, but some keystrokes that you learn some keystrokes that you can kind of transfer in other uses. Or you learn just also keyboard skills and mouse skills just to operate a computer, which can be argued that this is more instrumental. Does this make it clearer? There's a lot of gray areas, and we come to that. This is the biggest gray area that I actually found. So I dived into this whole thing, and then there was like ICT skills. Okay, how do we define that? And so if you go further, Cristobal Cobo, he's a professor in Oxford right now. He was in Mexico before. He has done this huge mind map of all these different definitions of how ICT skills, ICT literacy, media literacy, how this is defined by different people. And this is, you cannot see anywhere, but I zoomed in 3 aspects. If you zoom in the first one, here's the OECD. They have the basic skills, advanced skills, specialist skills, Microsoft, how they have defined. So there's all these overlapping definitions of that, but then there's also like curriculums that these different associations have developed. So it's a huge amount of different definitions, and this is mostly just in developed regions. If you go further, one more, then we come also to what, again, Professor Kolko has learned from her research in Central Asia, is really kind of what is considered basic computer literacy in the Western world are considered sophisticated skills held by small segments of the population in developing countries or in transitioning countries, which actually can lead, they actually found as well that these basic skills can lead to higher paid jobs. And I don't want to go too far into that because I know here employability, that all falls within, it's not one-to-one kind of going to an employability, but it helps to have skills that can be considered for that. So with this, I already come to our instrument development. So I still have not solved now the ICT skills, right? So I cannot stand here and say, oh, and actually for us, we have defined ICT skills as this. But what we have done, we have realized, okay, there's really at least for our study, we need to know a little more. Otherwise, we will not be able to make an argument. So if you go further, we have developed an employer survey. And with this employer survey, what we try to do, it's kind of apart from our other instruments, we try to find out what skills were required by employers for their recent hires. And we kind of go over the board. We don't want to know a specific sector, just everything. Like we say, the last 2 hires, not the skills that you wanted them to have. We really want to know what were the skills that these people had that you hired. And probably we hope that from that we kind of can go a little further and say, okay, these are skills that are actually, required or kind of wanted in that market that we do our study. Because again, the study is in Brazil. So we went into the ICT skills itself, but then also had questions to cognitive skills, social skills, creation, innovation, lifelong learning, just to see also what aspects are wanted there. Okay. So this is basically the overarching thing, the employer survey, which will kind of results will allow us to analyze the data that we get from the interview and our computer-based exercises.
And Judith, you haven't done any of those surveys yet?
No. I mean, we ran some of them kind of with people when we were in Brazil, but it was not even, I would not even try to call it a pilot study, because it was people that we were kind of referred to, or so it was not anything like this as any data.
Do you ask any kind of questions that ask the employers ICT skills relative to other things you might be looking for?
What are you referring to?
So
like
if it
other
was
things?
like a manufacturer of something, glass window frames, and they're hiring the last 2 people they hired.
Yeah. So I mean, so you're clearly documenting the skills that they have.
Mm-hmm.
Do you ask the employers how important those
Yes.
skills are?
We do.
Good.
We do ask them how important they were. We also asked them what influence they had on the salary offered, and we asked them what time per week approximately the person makes use of those skills. So these 3 questions to get kind of a little more deeper into that.
How many employers do you expect to see?
This is really up in the air. We have contacts at one. It's really difficult as well. We made contact at one telecenter there, who have also kind of a lot of connections with employers in Rio de Janeiro, because they have kind of people that search for work. But we are still in conversation with them because research not necessarily is seen as something good. Employers sometimes are just afraid by research as well. They're like, okay, we don't know, is this kind of from the government? Where does it come from? And they are very sensitive about their relationships that they have. So they agreed kind of that they will send it to some of those. We're going to look further. And then Martha also has said she has some connections that she will send that out. But this is an employer survey that we are not so worried about because we don't need any people going somewhere. We're going to put this online, and then it's going to be mailed out. So.
Is this an existing survey that you've adapted, or?
No, we actually put this together. It is what we looked into to develop all these instruments is a lot of curriculums. What people learn from different schools, what are required for different jobs, for job interviews, kind of all over the board, and then kind of put this together to kind of get a clear vision. But it's also, for the employer survey, it has a very wide range, so it was easier because we can just go from very basic to very advanced. It is more difficult for the computer-based exercise, and I will talk a little bit about that, how difficult it was for us to kind of, okay, what skills do we kind of measure without getting the person totally frustrated because they cannot do anything, or just saying, oh, this is all kind of totally easy.
And because the employer survey is asking about the staff skills, I'm wondering, because there's quite some detailed questions there, and I'm wondering if when you were testing it, or pseudo-testing it, it was easy for the employers to say they knew that their last hire had those individual skills.
Oh, okay. The employer survey we actually didn't test yet. So this is, I answered this in wrong before. We tested our other, with people that we met there. We did not go to any company yet to ask for that. So yeah, we don't know. We just tested it kind of, with colleagues. And there was kind of, but it's really difficult to, do it with just colleagues. So yeah. So then, again, this employer survey kind of gives us some information about our other instrument. The interview script was what we initially developed, and what we then kind of split, the computer-based exercise, we split up from that because it just got too long, and it was also very different kind of aspects that we wanted to look at. So what the interview script is going to allow us, we're going to ask questions about technology use, standardized information instruction, how they have learned and acquired their skills, the use patterns, and then also some self-reported skills. But what this interview script is more, it's really a conversation. It's not really a survey that we ask a question, we get the answer yes, no. We have one main question, if you go to the next one. So, for example, this first one is really technology use, and technology in the very broad sense, like what do you recall about your earliest use of experience with technology? And so this will hopefully start a conversation, and then we only have prompts that the enumerator is going to kind of, if the person has not addressed that, then they can use these prompts to basically help them kind of remind them on some things like when you were young, who was the most technological literate person you knew at the time, and what have you learned from him, her. And then also the kind of equipment that you use, and then did you use it in different ways that it was intended for. So we kind of wanted to see how have they tinkered with technology when they were young, and how were they exposed to technology, what was it? Was it a phone? Was it a car? What kind of technology was it? And then we go on to that and kind of ask more kind of how do you use technology now? Where do you use technology? And then this interview script is also going to go more into detail about, okay, what is different in using this technology or the computers that you use right now? What is different when you use it in a public access point as opposed to in home? Why do you use it, and what are the disadvantages. So, but then we realized, especially when we got to the skills, that we have to have a better script for that, because otherwise we will not get into more like find out what skills they want to have. So we did kind of just the research, what did other researchers use to find out about skills, and found that there was a lot of self-reporting, kind of, okay, what on a level from 1 to 5, how good can you do this? And then kind of self-report the paper-pencil tests, what the EU digital literacy model is actually, these are 2 questions that are also in the user survey, and we have actually used those as well because we think that hopefully we can kind of categorize our findings or our users a little bit and see how they compare to the user survey, or also the immigrant women in Europe that were used there as well. But what we based this tool mainly on was really the PISA ICT literacy assessment. They did a feasibility study in 2001, I think, to see what tasks, how can they just evaluate from students what they know about the internet, how they evaluate information. And we actually contacted these authors of this study because we hope that we can just reuse their instrument, even so it was a very long instrument. It's a 2-hour test, and we never wanted to do that, but we wanted at least parts of that. We didn't get their permission to use it for something else right now. It was also from ETS, the learning center, so there's an industry behind that. So I guess that was one of the reasons. But it's still sad, but it gave us a good idea on, okay, these are the tasks that people in, I think they tested it in Australia and in Japan, what they could do. So we had some kind of level that we wanted to be on. So if we go further, we have this script is basically in 3 parts. It's standardized question, how computers are used and how the necessary skills were acquired. These are the same questions that we also have in our interview script. So these questions tie these 2 instruments together, because we expect for this to have a higher sampling group than for the interview, because it's just easier to analyze. And then a self-reporting on understanding of terms and activities performed on the computer. These are the questions that the EU used, as well as Easter Hargitail has a very good kind of how good do you understand this computer term. And we can evaluate that. And then our computer-based exercise, and I'm going to tell a little more about that. So what we want the people to do, we kind of wanted to get it not too abstract, so people also understand it. We asked them to create a flyer for a hotel in their region, so they can relate to that. And then also kind of tasks all around this, creating a flyer or this hotel kind of idea, work on a spreadsheet, and then assess search information. We kind of have a sheet where we have 10 different questions about, or 10 different search results about yellow fever, which is common in Brazil. And we basically just ask them, okay, which information would you trust more or less, and things like that. Send an email, good question. This is actually one thing that we were not sure about. Actually, I have to say, at the very beginning, we tested this instrument also with colleagues here. We sent it also to François Barn. They were kind of, oh, that's all pretty easy. And it is obviously easy if you work every day with a computer. It is really easy. But then what we found out in Brazil when we tested this instrument, it was actually, okay, not so easy. So people say, yes, I know how to write an email, but then when they actually should do it, they go to their Orkuchi or, want to initiate a chat. So there's also some terminology. So it was interesting. And then we also, because I think the biggest problem for this script was also, how do we get on the soft skills? There's like, yes, tasks, yes, but then collaboration and team building, it's really hard. How do we evaluate this? How do we ask for that? How do we test this? So we developed 2 questions where we hope that people kind of could potentially make use of their social network to find out the answer, and we'll see how that goes.
What did you ask?
There's a virus on their computer. It's a new virus, and so what would they do? Who would they contact? Or we did not say who would you contact, because that would basically be a little leading. So just imagine you're not here and you have any resources that you wanted. How would you approach this? So this is how the script mainly looks for the computer-based exercises. It's really kind of, it's copy and paste, copy this text and paste it somewhere else. And then it goes a little further, kind of, okay, insert it as a footer. And then change the font size, so really very instrumental skills. Go further. This is kind of the flyer that we have created. We asked them also to go to the internet and find a picture on a specific website that we created, and then save it and insert it into this flyer. And then a basic Excel sheet, kind of see if they know how to sort columns, or just, you know, to see how they would approach a Excel sheet. And we just, yes, it's a big jump from saying, okay, I know how to game, you need to know how to do an Excel sheet, but there's so much knowledge what gamers do. I mean, there's, I think, Mark, you're a big gamer, right? There's this whole wiki behind, like, you know, you have to create big Excel sheets kind of to kind of record all the things that you do. So it's very common, actually, that gamers have this knowledge, even so at first look, it doesn't look like that. Right?
I have, yes. I have in the past created an Excel spreadsheet in order to track something I was trying to accomplish in a game. Mm-hmm. And I have friends who have done the same. So it's not just, I'm a big nerd, but it's not just me.
No, that's the thing. So yeah, that's the question about antivirus software alerts you that your computer is infected with a computer virus. What would you do in response? Imagine they're not here and you can use any resources you would like. So that's kind of what we hope from that. Okay, we just talked about this already. That's completed. So these are all our three scripts, basically, in the interview script and the computer-based exercise. We actually had those scripts. And we went to Brazil, and we did the sampling really was kind of, we were thinking that we have to kind of piggyback on the user survey. We wanted to work with the same research partner, and because there is already, they had established already a knowledge about the area, and we wanted to have about 50 for the interview, and then more 250 for the computer-based exercises, because we brought it down to 25 to 35 minutes that we hope that the computer-based exercises could be developed, could be done. So we can go over that. Brazil, we went to Brazil, and this was the only picture on the beach, and we actually really just went there because we lived like 3 blocks from the beach. But most of our time we spent really in the favelas. If you go further, I'm just going to show you a couple of pictures. It's kind of like, yeah. So the favelas, the low-income group. This first picture was from El Rocinho, which is the largest slum in Rio, and we actually had the chance not to walk in there, but we drove through. And we actually just did this because we had the head of the LAN houses, or they pay for internet cafes that you go there with us, and he knew people there. I'm very used to a lot of hectic and a lot of people. I'm very often in Morocco and in the souk, and so I'm used to that, but there was kind of a strange feeling to it going there. So this is the biggest one. The other ones that we were most of the time were actually what they call pacified favelas. If you go further, this is Santa Marta. Looks very similar. Is smaller. They all have usually telecenters as well in there. We visited various telecenters there, which are often government funded. They are pacified because there is people like this running around everywhere and kind of control things, which is not always something that people want. This picture, I needed to put it in Big Brother Santa Marta because, yes, there's less drug dealing or drug dealers, but then there's definitely, you have the police all around and kind of feel under observation the whole time. While we were there, we also were interviewed by a radio station. So I want to say that it was really critical for our visit there that we had very good contacts. We worked with a student there, and she did ethnographic work with LAN house owners in the favelas. So she knew all these people, and we were always welcome. And I actually went then by myself the last day to go on further. It's just, I didn't include this picture to show you how awful it is or what it is, but it's really how small and kind of, there's no streets in there, so it's really hard to find your way around. So even so, I knew I was with the land house owners before, and I went there by myself, but I really didn't find the right way anymore, so I got totally sidetracked there and got somewhere else. I found out finally it's always, people are super helpful and really open to everything. It's just this, think about that. But yeah, so that's where we're in the land houses there in Rio de Janeiro and in Porto Alegre. We got both. We got what Beth called the dog and pony show, I think. So it's kind of, when we were kind of, they knew that we were coming. Nevertheless, I mean, this was a great center, and we still have contacts with them. And they are actually the ones also that we hope that they will be essentially in distributing our employer survey.
This
But
is
they
Porto
definitely-
Alegre?
No, this was in Rio de Janeiro, actually. Yeah. They're just a huge center. And then pictures are often here on this projector. But then there were other LAN houses. That was Porto Alegre, actually. That was in downtown Porto Alegre. Also LAN houses, paid for LAN houses that did not allow gaming in there. So it's not only Telecenter and government funded, it's also other centers that did not allow funding. But then we also saw the real deal.
Why did particularly the private ones, the land houses, prohibit gaming?
It was a time issue, I think, because they had a lot of people coming through.
Oh, so it was
yeah.
a distraction.
It was a distraction for them, yeah. And they also, that was two of the centers in downtown. They did not want us to give us information. They were like, researchers, oh, you don't have a badge, yeah, the business card doesn't really work. It's kind of, you kind of have to be very official there. And they were like, but we don't know where you come from, so we don't want to talk to you. So, yeah. But then the other LAN houses was basically mostly in kind of, that was, for example, this LAN house, there was right here next to it was a kitchen to it. So it's kind of just a couple of computers inside a house. But people know where they are. So, but this is also what we have learned. If you go further, this is just a sign that actually says, okay, yeah, we are not coming. Because this is also what we have learned. It's really difficult to conduct research. I mean, we expected some, both Beth has worked in Central Asia. And but we knew that stuff like this will happen, but we were not aware to what extent it would happen, that there's just like, oh, you know what, today we are not open, or we close earlier, so they have official openings hours, but just kind of behold to that. Or then also, what happened a lot is LAN houses and telecenters do move, and it takes insider knowledge to find them, and not only insider knowledge. So we took a whole morning where we picked 8 telecenters from the inventory. I think that was also done from here. Not one we found. So we went with a taxi to all those centers, and they were either closed or they had moved. So, but then others were, not at this place, but just the next street there was another LAN house that we then instead could visit. So that was great, but it was just really to see that even probably the mapping that is now developed will probably not hold true for very long.
So much? Why do they move so much?
I think a lot of them are illegal as well. So what happens a lot in these favelas, in the slums, is they are kind of forced into this illegality because electricity companies, they are not forced to go in there. The government doesn't make them go in there and provide services. The same for telephone companies, so they don't need to provide the internet to people, right? So the people kind of are forced to steal it. And LAN houses very often do this as well, or then they don't have permission to open as a LAN house, so they open as a restaurant, and then they go somewhere else. It's just...
So there's a legal requirement that you get permission to open one of these?
Yes, I mean there is legal requirements to open a business, and very often that's missing.
When you say they're illegally tapping into power supplies or illegally... Is that, I'm just trying to get a better understanding of why you say they're illegal. What's illegal about them?
Because they're illegally tapping into power supplies, yeah, especially in the favelas, which is different now in the pacified favelas because officially it should be now that they're pacified, that there is power companies now coming in there, but then there is also this issue that people cannot always afford this, so they're still forced otherwise to get their supplies where they had them before. But I mean,
see why they're nervous about quote-unquote researchers.
or researchers.
Somebody showing up asking questions.
Yeah, definitely. That's right. Also, it's really essential that there's people, that we have people that work there.
Even for the telecenters, because those, or the telecenter, the way, how do you define telecenters here? Are they the government funded and or NGO?
Yes, NGO, government or NGO funded.
Are
and
they,
providing.
do they also, did you find that they also were reluctant and or tapping into some of these illegal power supplies?
The only
Or are we talking mostly about the
the
land
telecenters actually that we visited were only the ones that we kind of were announced and they knew that we were coming, so we don't know about that, but they were definitely very open. They wanted to show that. I mean, they wanted to show that to researchers. What we found so from the inventory is that very many telecenters were gone already. They're just not there anymore. They have closed. Either for this, possibly it's a funding stopped, or I don't know what the reasons were behind that.
These are the 8 that you were talking about were all non-land houses?
Right. I don't know. No, they were not all land houses. There were.
Were any of the 8 land houses in the inventory?
No, they were telecenters mostly.
Okay.
Yeah, I think there's another term for that. Telecenters, libraries were but there were some other. I don't know what the term for it was.
But we don't actually have the term telecenter in the inventory.
Mm-hmm.
It's just.
I have it in my notebook. I can look it up what it was, but yeah, but they were all
It'd be great, though, I think, from the point of view of the inventory, to have an idea, if you could, of the velocity of turnover of these kind of places, like the telecenters. I mean, you said you don't know why they closed. If it were possible to ask, I think that would really be helpful information.
Right. We asked some, just people on the street, but then people just didn't know. As I can provide those addresses that we tried to look at, if that is helpful. But some of them we asked, and there were actually one was like, oh yeah, no, this is closed. They were a year ago, and they don't know why. So, yeah, but we have not always kind of inquired more where there was, or what the reason behind was. If you go back to that, what we said before, because there are a couple of more things. What we actually we expected land houses and telecenters to be different in their setup, so that they were kind of, they're smaller and that's, not kind of a game or cardy that you think, but they were even more different. So just on space requirements for conducting an interview, super small, sometimes very dark. So for us, it was just more than we expected. And then also, one of the findings was, we knew that we cannot expect everybody to have Microsoft Word and Excel and all these things, but we did not expect that there was next to no software on these computers. It was really, the game's Counter-Strike, but then there was really no other software, not even Open Office or something like this. We found that this was just very often the case.
Did you find out any reason why? Is it why they don't have any other software on computers?
Most of them, that's one of the funny things, most of them say, oh yeah, we have that, no worries. And then they search. I'm like, oh no, it's not here. And it's just, I guess, not used ever. And then they think they have it, but it was not really there. It was also kind of a problem for us to just get the pin drive. They just don't use, I cannot kind of generalize this that they don't use them, because obviously telecenters that have more visitors that do research, instrumental uses, classes, they are set up for that. But telecenters where the highest percentage of visitors do games and social networking, they're just not set up for that, and nobody ever uses it. So pin drives didn't work. Then software didn't work. So this kind of made us rethink our sampling strategy a little bit, because we thought also for the computer-based exercise, if we do it like with the interviews, we just go there, recruit people on a random basis and sit with them and do that. But we just found that it's not always possible. And then also because of space requirements, here are 2 people that play, and conducting 8 or even 5 interviews just in this darkness of many spaces, and then there's the loudness. It was just not a viable strategy that we had. There was more to conduct one interview with that. So what we have changed, just this last picture you could see as well, because of the space requirement, there's just the person always looking into your instrument, and you basically are evaluating them, right? So we didn't want that. So we created a participant handbook that we actually can give to the participants so they can read the questions themselves if they want, so they don't have to look in the other instrument or have something to do. They also can give their ratings there. We changed our sampling strategy. We now have decided that for the computer-based exercises, we actually will pre-select the locations. That's also because of the internet connection speed differences that LAN houses and telecenters have. I kind of tried to download my own email at one telecenter, actually, the dog and horse show, dog and pony show that I showed before, and it took, I think, at least 10-15 minutes to get my emails downloaded just because the connection was so bad.
That's a high-end one, sounds like.
That was a high-end center, yeah. Make all the documents available online right now. This plays again in the strategy, in the sampling strategy, where we just pre-select locations where we know they have a stable internet connection. They have the software that we need. And so now we have the instrument, the Excel sheet on Google Docs. And we produced a website because we also require our participants to go to a website. And we just selected a hotel website and asked them to download pictures. What happened then is that all the pictures were copyrighted. So things like, just little things where that then changed. So if you go to the next one, we produced an...
Oops. What have I done wrong? There we go.
Yeah, right. It just produced a website where the participants have to surf through, basically, and then select the pictures. So all this to just go away from being required to go to different sites where we don't know what the internet speed are. So one other thing also that I should mention is that we have, with our sampling strategy, we have changed the computer-based exercises. Initially, we thought we'd do a screener. We kind of ask questions, and then we kind of can say they're non-instrumental or they're instrumental. But I mean, the non-instrumental and instrumental, it's definitely it's not either this or that. They're somewhere in between. So we needed to adjust our, not anymore screener, but the questions that we asked to kind of find a little better out what they really are. For example, in the initial one, we had like, play computer games online or offline, and then what level's role are you playing in your favorite games? People were just kind of confused as well, like if they didn't really do so much computer gaming, the levels and the roles. So if you go to the next one. So we have now, we have shortened this skill question or what they use it for, and then do you play computer games? And if they say yes, or they do that for school or for fun, then you have questions that go a little deeper, like what kind of computer games do you play, and then how long do you play computer games? So we hope we can situate them a little better on this continuum of non-instrumental to instrumental, and the same to Facebook, also kind of finding out their relationship to Facebook. How important is it to them? How often are they on there? And that's basically it.
Did you test these questions?
Just with colleagues, because this was developed after the fact that we were in Brazil. But we have, for example, this question is an instrument that comes from, what's her name? Chris Lampe and Nicole Ellis, Michigan State University. She has done a lot of work with Facebook. She was also at the iConference. Two researchers, Michigan State, and she has developed this Facebook profile. And so we just have adapted this for our use, and hopefully we'll get that. We'll definitely cite here as well. So yeah, and that's where we are right now. We have this, and I would love to present some data and say this is what it is. Not quite there yet. Yeah. But hopefully I can come back in 2 months or 3 months and have some results and see how the instruments held up and what were the results.
It sounds to me like you've really done this with your eyes open to what you're actually finding, and that the accommodations you've made in the sampling and so on are sort of necessary to get it done. It does seem to me that the sampling you have to aim for inevitably biases the sample dramatically toward the kind of people who go to these high-end places that are connected. They're likely to be places that are more likely to have this instrumental software and so on. I just think you need at least to think about how to pick up data from the places that are tougher.
I probably described this wrong because, yes, we have changed the sampling strategy that we have pre-selected locations that have all these high-end equipment, but we still want to draw our sampling from the low-end areas, just kind of provide a phone number and a contact address, and then make appointments for people to come to that high-end place. Because also one thing that we found in Brazil is, I always thought, well, people don't go out of their favelas when they're in there. They don't go somewhere else. This is not necessarily true, right? Because everything is so close together, especially in Rio, that people work in high-end centers as well. And transportation is relatively cheap, so people can come to another area to do the test. So the question still stays like, will that work? Will this call in, make an appointment, and then come at a certain time to conduct the test? How will this work out? Researchers in Brazil have told us that this is a viable option, especially because now we have changed also our little gift of gratitude to hopefully a pin stick that we can give them, so that there is some hope that this can work out. Because definitely, yes, we have considered this. We don't only want to have these high-end users for our tests. For the computer-based exercises, we really want to make sure that we have a very wide range of people. We want to have gamers, lower social and kind of status, as well as high, but then also kind of people that never have touched a game, very instrumental users. Because that's the main point. Can we compare this? Can instrumental users can do this? And then if yes, because then we could potentially make this claim, okay, there are skills that are transferable. For the interview, we will stay really we actually really just want to have gamers and social networkers that we interview. We don't see any need to interview any instrumental users. But yeah, thanks for pointing that out again. That was bad explained. Anything else? Yeah.
So there's, being a geek, I know that there's, at least anecdotally, a lot of talk about how early on in the development of point-and-click interfaces, that one of the best instruments for teaching people how to use the interface was solitaire.
Mm-hmm.
And that...
That's how I
So I'm just wondering if you encountered any other examples of previous game use that had taught people what some of these skills we're now taking. I mean, writing email compared to understanding a point-and-click interface, those are two completely different levels.
Right.
I'm wondering if you had any research on older computer use and how games might have assisted that.
I actually did not. A question, but this was my main surprise, that it was like there's all this research out there that really says, okay, this is all so great, but no concrete examples like you say right now with the solitaire. Actually, I would love to see this research if you can find something.
If I
like
can
this.
find some.
Yeah, because I have not found anything concrete that says, okay, if you play this, then you learn this skill, and you can use this skill for somewhere else. So that's kind of one of the discrepancies.
Alan Kay did some stuff when he was introducing computers into schools. What was the Apple something? Classroom of the Future, or ACOT, something of that. Classroom of Tomorrow, where they tried to figure out the strategies, including games, which made kids more amenable to the use of technology in the classroom. So Alan Kay is definitely something.
K, how do you spell it? Just K?
K-A-Y is his last name.
Okay.
I have a friend who worked on the development of the Windows 7 version of Solitaire, so I will ask him if he knows any.
Perfect,
I would think it would be worth asking them. So I was working in business, and we had non-mouse-driven computers, and then we were equipped with mice, and we were told by our IT department to play solitaire. It was actually a strategy in the business to teach us how to use the mouse.
Interesting.
Mouse.
Okay.
Yeah. So they got that from somewhere. I was in New Zealand. They didn't bring that up. It's real games.
Some of the teaching, the typing tutor programs had built-in games. You hit the letters as they fell and so on. Mavis and others,
Mavis
all that they did or know of some research.
Right. But this is kind of where we kind of see, okay, this, would fall more on the side of this is an educational game, actually, because there's the content of the game that actually teaches you something. It's not like solitaire is really kind of, you don't realize that you learn something. You don't play it with the aim unless you try to start working for Microsoft, and you have to play it, but otherwise you really play it just for fun. You don't think, okay, I'm learning something by doing that. Now, if you play a game that teaches you how to learn keyboard skills, then yes, that's great, and games are great for that, but this is not what people usually do voluntarily. Kind of, you need to they need to have some, what do you call it, a sense or something behind that, kind of they need to want something specific to do that. But really, really, really want to look into like the commercial games that people really like to play just for the game itself, without thinking about learning, if they take something away from that. And was where I didn't find very much research.
Do you know what those games are in Brazil? Do you have a sense for what those games are?
Yeah, Counter-Strike was definitely everywhere. I mean, if we could have done these tools as CVE and Counter-Strike, then we actually would have been good off. But other than that, also like this casual games, Facebook games, we have seen a lot that people use that if they used Facebook. So yeah.
Does Orkut have games with it?
I think it's the same. It comes with the same, not the same, but casual games are played there as well. So.
Do you find that? Just to clarify that, some places were like predominantly game places.
Yes.
And then others were not.
Yes, and people knew where to go. Yeah.
And so okay.
Mm-hmm. It's.
So not many places that had kind of a mixed.
No, though there were places that kind of where people walked in to just do some job research or some other, not you, because that was what we mostly saw, right? Yeah. It's either Orkut or YouTube or games. Yeah. So there were people there that kind of were gaming, and then others would just come and go on a quite faster pace, just do something. We did see that, but for example, in the telecenter, I spent a full day doing some observations in these telecenters with youth, and it was mainly games. There was no, I don't think there was anybody doing something else.
When you say telecenter, meaning that it was
that was at the
funded by the state,
at the funded where everything was free. Actually, that was one of the. I think it was the only center that we saw that actually internet access was for free. Everything else, even telecentered, even so, if they were funded or had some funding, they were also charged for access.
Did you say you did or did not go to a library?
We tried to go to a library. We did go to a library, and we actually asked them if they have a computer. And like, no. And we asked researchers there, and also people live there. Like, if you would go, if you want to do something on a computer, would you go to a library? And like, no. As a library was really, no library had computers there, which was really surprising because one of the initial research questions was like, how do kind of free public access places compare to for pay public access places, right? But we realized we cannot do this because there is not really free public access places like libraries. Yeah. So that's interesting.
Do you recall, Chris, how many libraries show up in our Brazil data with ICT?
It's relatively small. It's pretty small.
Yeah. We can look at our landscape data too to see that when we have percentages, right? Like 10% of libraries or 20%.
It's a little rougher though.
Well, I think even in Brazil, even the public libraries, computers or not, they have an annual membership fee. All public libraries in Brazil.
Yeah. It's pretty.
But it's
low,
yeah.
It's low.
Right.
Yeah, but it was surprising that even people that live there, they would not consider going to a library to do that. It's just because they wouldn't know where to go to a library where a computer is.
Our data is 108 in the entire country.
Yeah.
Compared to how many?
Oh.
Aren't there like 15,000 cyber cafes?
100,000.
108 libraries with computing access.
100,000 that are counted, because I would say that over 50% that we visited are definitely not in any database or in any, anything that's counted by official
This is just,
people.
what's his name's estimate, right? The guy who is the head of the Land House Association.
Mario, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think
He's the
that's.
one that just comes up with these numbers.
Yeah, no, but also from what we visited.
Yeah.
Just the ones that we visited, just by the impression that they gave, kind of proportionally what we kind of visited. But like, majority was probably not in databases.
I know it's not the area of focus of the site, but one of the things I do think is interesting about the definition non-instrumental is coming kind of more from a venue perspective and policies that are in venues. I know in the U.S., at least 10 years ago, there were quite a few policies against email communication. So from the policy perspective, not the user, but the policy was that's not productive. There are people who need to be doing homework, really doing their jobs. But emailing your relative is not instrumental use.
Which is, I think here it changes now a little bit. We just did some recent research and we're like, okay, yeah, games are actually, they are accepted now in libraries. I mean, officially what you see in research, how this kind of trickles down into the actual library patron that actually accepts that. Because I have to say for myself, even though I have all these research telling me, yes, it's good, I don't necessarily, when my kids play computer games, I'm not necessarily always all excited about it. Right? So I can understand every library patron and say, oh, yeah, computer games, and he's there already since 2 hours, and that's really bad. So there is some level in myself that understands this. Like,
Do you find out in your surveys to what extent people who are the gamers and social do other things as well?
Yes, we will find that out, yes.
Okay.
That's definitely questions.
That's part of it, right?
That's part of it, and then also kind of finding out which skills they have acquired mainly through through school or work, and then also how they have acquired the other skills.
And do you get, I think you may have mentioned this, whether they're, like you said, some of their first experiences were potentially through a game, or whether it was through school introduction or something.
That's what we hopefully get at. That's the high expectations that we have on the interview script, because that really goes in detail, like way back when you first were introduced, like how did that happen, and then how have you used that in between, and how do you use it now, and where is the differences? So, yeah, high hopes. Theoretically, it could all work. So yeah. Excellent. Any more questions? Well, thank you, everybody.
And if anyone is interested in brochures and copies.